Hello, this is Bruce, and welcome to my tutorial on the Carenado B1900D Delta. This is really a video for myself, just so that I can keep track of things, as I don't often fly a plane and months go by, and I'll forget some of the little details. So this is my way of quickly refreshing myself in about 25 minutes, up to the pre-taxi conditions. So I'm using P3D version 4.2, Chase Plane, Active Sky, Ultimate Traffic Live is at 100%, both general and commercial aviation, and the P3D traffic is on 100% in both cases as well. I love a lot of aircraft in the skies. Windows 10, i5 is overclocked, SSD drive, and NVIDIA GTX 1070 for those that are curious. And I hope that not only will this be a help to me down the road, but it'll be a help to anybody that's considering purchasing or just wants a little refresher, as I will need probably down the road. Right now I'm looking at the cold and dark condition of the aircraft, and the Shift 5 brings up the options for static elements, instrument reflections in the VC windows. This static elements option will only work if two conditions are met. One, the parking brake is on, and two, nothing else is on. Otherwise you won't be able to see these happen. So if you click on that box next to static elements, immediately they all disappear. And the static elements do include the cones at the ends of the wings too, which aren't in view here at this point in the window. We're now in the pilot and command position, and down here the first thing we would normally do if the parking brake was not on is to set it. It's this knob right here on the shaft, and it comes up when you left click it. Now the brakes are on when it's up in that position. This is the trim wheel, and you want to have nose up 1.5. I find just two mouse wheel movements on mine brings it up to that point. If you want to see where it sits on the wheel, this little arrow here will be nearly at the fourth mark, just shy of it in the green forward zone. Otherwise, I get a little pop-up window you can't see on the video that tells me that it's set at 1.5. That's a pretty close spot to leave it at, just as you want to get started here. Then the next thing we're going to do, or what I prefer to do, is get rid of the yokes, because I'm not able to lean left and right and forward to see things. So clicking at the base of each of them will drop them away, and if you click on the round piece here, they'll come back like so. So I prefer to keep them out of the way. It makes things much more visible. The batteries are going to be located right here to the pilot's left underneath the master switch cover. It may or may not be down when you look at it, but just click on that left click, it'll pop up. Turn the batteries on. You can see a lot of things are now coming to life, and the rest then can begin. The engine anti-ice switches are in this rectangle here. The other anti-ice switches are all through here, some of which will turn on every time we fly, and some of which we won't. Up above here, and we'll get to those in a minute. Up above, we want to turn on our beacon to ground. That's a left click. This has three positions. From this angle point of view, it doesn't look like it's in the lower off position, but just to left click it, it should then sit on the ground, and on the ground position, and you're ready to go on that. Then we're going to look at the power levers, and these items right here. The power levers are at idle. The prop levers are currently in feather. I just put them up on taxi like so, where the taxi is listed right there, and I'll bring it in a little closer so you can read it more easily. It's right there. And then the condition levers are here. They're on fuel cutoff. Some people put them up to low idle and then start the engines. I'm not going to do that. I'm going to follow normal procedures, and we'll just leave them on the fuel cutoff at this point. The EFIS switches are right down here, right there, and what those are your electronic flight instrument systems for the FMS and such. So we're going to turn those on. Then it says to turn our rudder boost on, and that's right down here. It's normally on. I turned it off just for the demonstration purposes, but on or off, it's going to be on. And then the elevator trim also needs to be on. The interesting thing is when you right click it, it pops up and then always jumps back to center as if it's off or something. Down though clicked is off. It just always retro rebounds back into the middle. Notice there is no taxi off, push forward on off, yaw damper, steering power on, power park, anti-skid switches available. The Carenado people left those off, and they're probably never going to be put into place. That's just not how they work in that company, I guess. They're just finishing a product and they wrap it up. Your bleed air valves should be closed, and they are in the middle. Instrument and environmental off would be clear to the bottom. I just turn them off to the mid position off. The environmental blowers, manual temp, this one's just an up, down, high, low sort of switch. This increase, decrease. This one you'll leave in the off, which is in the middle position. Auto temp, you can dial it later on to up to 100, down to 30, or 10 rather. Just leave it on the auto temp. And then this is your environmental blower knob, mode control knob. And just leave it off for now. Later we'll turn it on to auto. So that's that section. Now we're going to go and fill in the FMS. The FMS is here. It says the universal title. Let's just expand it by clicking on the universal. Now we're going to turn the power on. On the very first page that you see on the init page, initialization page, the only thing you can do is to press accept. That's it. Then up pops our flight plan. The flight plan is automatically entered into the FMS when you've set up your navigation flight planner earlier. So all it's doing is inserting it, which is a nice savings of time, which I really like, and I'm glad that they did that. Running down through your options here, you've got messages, it does nothing. Data, it does nothing. Fuel gives you 5 pages worth of information, but none of it is alterable. It's only for visual information purposes only. Tuning doesn't work. Nav does nothing. DTO, direct to, does. Currently this arrow tells me that I'm direct to the VOR CTW. If, say for instance, I wanted to go to air instead, I would enter 3 in the keyboard and then press enter, and now the arrow has moved and I'm going to be going directly to air and not to the CTW VOR. If I want to go back to where I was originally, I could hit DTO again, press 2, press enter, and I'm back where I was. So the DTO does work. If you want to go to a waypoint, for instance, that has not been pre-selected in your flight plan and the let's say air traffic control is directing you to it, you can hit DTO, and then I know there's one nearby spelled SPACE, enter. Now I'm going to be going directly to that new waypoint that's been entered. And that's very handy, but when you click to the flight plan, all of our flight plan that we saw earlier is now gone, and it's not on page 2 either. That is a summary statement. So how do we get that flight plan back if this was a mistake or for any other reason? Well, you go back up to your navigation, open up your flight planner, click OK on the flight plan that was originally installed. Do not say no then when it wants to know if you want to move the aircraft back to the departure airport. No, I don't. And then presto, we're right back where we started. So if we've made a mistake, we can fix it. Then on this flight plan page, and it says that there's 3 pages, and as you can see the summary's at the end of it all. It will not cycle back to one. You got to go previous to go back. You can, on this page, change the altitudes. The way you'll do that is, let's say we want 14,000 in here. Press the this next to that, the dash, and then let's put in 14,000 like so, and then hit enter, and there, we've changed the destination altitude. And that'll automatically enter into the altitude if you altitude select Alt Cell on your navigation system a little bit later on. So it takes this unit's information and applies it directly. So that's good. VNAV does nothing. List does nothing. Menu gives you some arrival airport options here. You can fiddle with those yourself, but back to flight plan here. And then performance does have informational data. And so that's a happy event there. We'll put that back down. So we've got our, one last thing I will say. Let's say, for instance, we wanted to insert space. Instead of a go-to feature, we wanted it just in a lineup. And let's say we want it before air. Well, we'll click on the air, and then we'll type in SPACE, and then we hit enter, and it'll go before the one we had clicked. Like we had air clicked and ready to go. It was flashing. Now the one we entered goes before it, and that's important to know. It won't go after, it'll go before it. And then we can again change the altitude if we choose to. If we want to get rid of any of these, we click to the one we want to see get rid of it, and we see it's now flashing, and we can hit the delete button, and presto, it's gone. So that's a very handy feature. Now we're going to go ahead and start the engines. I'm going to roll over here to the pilot side on the left. And I don't think you have to do this to start the engines, but I do it anyway. Standby pumps, both left and right, are on. The auxiliary pumps are on auto. This switch here for fuel quantity, let me just zoom in so you can see what I'm talking about. This is strictly a passive gauge. It only tells you how much fuel is in your main tanks, which is on right now, or in the auxiliary down position. It tells you how much fuel is in there. It does not transfer fuel, so don't look for that to happen. So we set those up first, and then we're going to turn on the engine auto ignition arm. They're both going to activate with a left click. There's no individuality there. Then we're going to turn on the right ignition engine start, and then we're going to look at this here. It's running up. It's going to run up to about 11, and then it slows down quite a bit as it creeps towards 12. Anywhere in my mind between 11 and 12, 12 probably being the more legit. I'm going to run now that condition lever up to about 17, and you can see it's going to rev up pretty good, and then it's going to settle back down. So there, it's settled back down. Then we can turn on our right generator, and we can turn off our ignition. Then we're going to go ahead and start the left, and you'll see the same thing taking place. Right here, it's going to come up to about 11. And then creep towards 12, and that's when I'm going to move my condition lever up to match the other one. And there we are. So that's behaving as it should. Then we can go ahead and turn off the ignition mains. We can turn off the auto ignitions. We can turn on the left generator. We can close the cover if we choose to. The AC bus right and the AC bus left can be turned on. Avionics can be turned on. There we go. Auto feather can be turned on. Stall warning heat can be turned on, and the pitot heat can be turned on, so the pitot tubes don't ice up in certain conditions, and then we lose our indicated airspeeds, and we don't know any longer what we're doing. So that's my sequence of things, and I think that works out very well for a fast flow. And then also we need to turn on our gen main ties, excuse me, down to open. We want to reset our bus sense there, and then back to norm. That should take care of all of the engine start procedures. Then before we want to taxi anywhere, we know that we've got our avionics on. We've got the EFIS switches are on here, or will be on. Again, there we go. They are on already. I'd forgotten where we were at. External lights can be turned on now. That's why flow sheets are so good. There's taxi. If we want to have a look on the wing edges and stuff for ice, we can use this. Nav. The beacon is there. The strobe also has a midway ground position, and then we'll turn on recognition and tail flood. I just turn everything on. I know some people don't, but I like to do that. And then if we want to see if we're generating power, we can go to left bus or right bus, and right now we should be, and we are generating power. So that's exactly what we want to see. Now we're going to go ahead and move over to the co-pilot's portion. And we're going to go back to this row of gauges, or switches right here. And we're going to turn them both on the bleed air valves. You can see the annunciators disappeared. That's good. We're going to put the manual temp down to auto. We're going to leave the auto temp there, and we're going to turn the environmental mode control, cabin control switch back to auto. Oops, there we go. That's a mouse wheel turned towards myself. Turns it to the right. Then we're going to turn the furnace on also. The prop sink is located right here, and as well as the anti-ice issues are all in here. The flaps need to be down to 17 degrees for takeoff. And we're going to go ahead and put our prop and our condition levers all full forward, preparation for taxi now. We're also going to set our cabin pressure, and that's down here in this dial there. Let's see if I can roll us into that area just more easily so we can see it better. Sorry. Too many switches. Here we go. Nice view. We will dial this up with our mouse wheel to, I don't know, 6,000 feet. And right about in there. And that's going to, then we're going to leave the rest of it alone. We don't do the cabin pressure dump. That's not an appropriate time to do that. We'll discuss this business in here with a pop-up where we can use it more readily, but just note that the yaw and the autopilot and the VORs and the selections of time to go and ground speeds, that's all in this area. And so you're going to be looking down and to your right a lot and fiddling with it in flight, there's a pop-up that's really, really nice and highly recommended, and we'll look at that. We're going to turn the gen ties now off, so we're going to pull those up. You see the annunciators are now off, all of them are off, and the oxygen levers, in case you're wondering where those might be at, are right here, right below the pilot's dash right there. So pull them both out and the oxygen will be flowing if that's what you need to do. So put those back for now. So we got flaps at 17, our auto feather is armed, our propeller controls and the power levers are at idle. The propeller controls are full forward, the power levers are at idle, condition levers are full forward. And we're getting closer and closer to being where we want to be for taxi. Blowers are on auto, annunciators are out, and the TCAS is on. The TCAS, by the way, is where you get your vertical speed indications. It says on off. When you turn it on, your TCAS is there available to you. You can see 2 aircraft out there, and then this dim switch is strictly how well it's lit up. So that's for your use. You can zoom in. I think here we go. There we go. Just using the mouse wheel, so out, in. I prefer to keep it pretty tight. It makes it a lot easier and simpler on the eyes. The barometric pressures, if you just hit B on your keyboard, they automatically change, and you can do that though also yourself, obviously, as you very well may know. Now let's step back here for a second, and we're going to look at the Avionics system here. Just click the top bar and it'll pop up like so. It says press any of these side keys to continue. I did. And now we're looking at a lot of traffic, as well as the magenta line, which is our route of flight. Traffic can be labeled or totally turned off. So we've got it off, fully labeled, no labels. If we leave it on fully labeled, obviously it looks like an impossible nightmare, but we can zoom in by using this wheel down here, the circle down there, and then the wheel on your mouse, and just wheel it forward, and you can get right into a 1 nautical mile range. We're going to back it off now to 10. That's generally where I keep it. Now we got some nice information. The view here is now in the center, but you can put the north right at the top, or you can just have a forward view wherever the nose of the aircraft is pointed. That's where it's going to be pointing as well. I like to just leave it in the center. Decluttering is exactly what it is. More information, a little bit less. I kind of keep it in the middle column, but some people like it maxed out. The base map can be terrain like this, or back to what we had before. And the weather, I'm not sure it really is that workable, but you could turn it on and see for yourself if you're satisfied. The map here, you can use this knob down here and you use your mouse wheel. You can go to TAWS, you can go to the trip information, the nearest airports, and the auxiliaries, and these do work. You can fiddle with those and adjust them as you like. There's several options available that make it pretty handy. So clicking again on the top of that sets it back where it belongs. This one's important. This is the Garmin GNS 530. It turns on with the left click of that C right there, and it'll fire up. Now to get this to operate, by the way, it was a blank and I couldn't figure it out for a while, but if you go into the Beech 1900D folder in the P3D V4 aircraft section, you can see that in there is this GNS 530 that's just waiting for you to click on it and install it. Otherwise it comes up blank. So install that from the folder and then you should see it appear. There is another one in there. I think it's incompatible from what I read. Just leave it alone. Just go for this one, and I think that's all you're really going to need. I think you're probably very familiar with this. One of the key pieces right now is the CDI switches from GPS to VLOC, so you can use your VORs. If you have it on GPS, your VORs aren't going to do anything for you. So that's something to keep in mind. Also, you can change the values with these V and C switch, exchange keys. And then if you press on the CV switch, it goes from the VOR information up to the COM information in that blue section there. So you can choose the one you want, dial in the numbers you need. They're a little bit tricky, and it's not like inner outer wheel, it's where on the outer wheel affects which to the left or the right of the decimal you're adjusting. And so that's helpful, and then click on the top and it'll drop back in. You can set your altitude here. There's no faster way to do it, although it kind of accelerates when you keep spinning it a lot. I'm just going to enter 17,000. Your squawk is very straightforward. It's either off or on. They don't give you standby or out, and that's a shame. And you can change the numbers up here with the mouse on the numbers themselves. I'm just going to zoom in just briefly. Here you can see where I'm going to change them just by lining my mouse up with whatever one I want. These dials don't work. And then over here, the comms, the dials do work. So outer dial is left of the decimal, the smaller inner dial is to the right of decimal. You can switch between them with the toggle. Nav works the same way. And then ADF works like the squawk did. You have to click the numbers themselves right there up on the red bar, and then you can exchange them with that. This obviously doesn't have a change. It's just the one squawk code that's listed. Alright, let's just go through a few more things that I think are handy for anybody to note. If you press Shift, well, I'll do it this way. Here in your artificial horizon, you click that and you get both the compass and the artificial horizon that'll pop up. If you click just the compass section, then you're going to end up with your autopilot popping up. An alternative to that, instead of doing it that way, is I think it's Shift 4. There we go. Shift 4 does the same thing. It might just be faster just to click the compass rose. And in this section here, you've got all kinds of activity. Don't worry about all this up here. The nav data here, it says on the left, down here you see push heading sync. Well, obviously the magenta heading is not lined up with the nose of our aircraft, but if you left click it, it jumps right there, and that's what you want to see, and it's very handy lining up on runways and that sort of thing. Now I'm going to go ahead and pop these up so you can see more clearly what's happening. In the inner wheel there, the inner knob, I'm using my mouse wheel now to turn right, turn left. If I click it with the left click, it jumps right back to the nose of the aircraft. Up here you've got ground speed, time to go, and timer. And if you put your mouse indicator, in this case I'm using the hand, if you right click on those letters, they jump from one to the other to the other. So you got ground speed, time to go, and you can see it's reflected here. So we've got ground speed, we've got time to go, and we've got the clock, and it's all showing up here in that gauge there. Then there's the timer set, which I'm not sure really works, but it is there, and if it works, great. Hope it does. I just haven't really checked it out. I use other means to time things. Here in this setting here, if you were to move it to the left on the arc, you can see the results. You can change the range by in the range knob there by left clicking or right clicking. It goes clear up to 640 and then drops with the next click clear back to 5. I generally keep it at 10. And then there's a map feature too over here on the far left. So we got arc, HSI, and I just leave it on HSI. I don't see the need to change it any other way. Decision height is noted here, and you can go up or down with that. It's preset at 200, so again, there's no real need to change it. This push course direct, if you press that, you can see where the main course that's in there right now, GPS with that little circle, that tells you this is the one that it's indicating from. And that is set through here, where you can see where GPS on the CDI is located. If you click it to V-lock, now you're over here with the little circle, and it's VOR1 or VOR2. And this course select piece here switches between VOR1 and VOR2. Your VOR1 will be in this box, and your VOR2 is clear over here in that box with the 110.6, and this has got the 113.7 listed. So just to give a little heads up. These arrows here, you'll first get a blue one. This is VOR1. If you click it again, it's VOR2. Click it again, you get automatic direction finder, and then it goes off. This one is magenta, exactly the same as the other one, just different color and shape. So you can have them both going at the same time, VOR1 and VOR2, just by the number of clicks that you choose to put. And then again, you can choose between VOR1 and VOR2. And again, if you go back up here to the CDI on your GNS 530 Garmin, you click GPS. Now you cannot select the VOR1 or VOR2, no matter how hard you try, because you've selected GPS, and this is the controlling feature for what happens there. Oh, one more thing. This little green circle tells you that it's either the VOR or the GPS that's at work. So that's how that works right there, and it's a very handy one. This tells you we're on the FMS, GPS, and And here we got the next waypoint, 66 nautical miles, and then ground speed in knots and the course. So just a general piece of information. Then we've got the usual heading, altitude. If you hit altitude, you will level off at that altitude. Nav, which will fly the GPS or the VORs if you've taken it out of GPS to the VLOC piece. Auto select will select the altitude that you've entered, unless you're running with the GPS through the FMS. And then in this case, it's the first waypoint. Remember, we changed to 14,000. This will automatically dial in at 14,000 when I click that alt select. So I'll just give you an example. I think I can get it to work here at this point. We'll just hit alt select, or let's see, we don't even have the thing on here, autopilot. Now we're going to hit alt select and alt select. And it's not going to work that way for right now, so we'll just skip that. But basically what it'll do is it'll dial it in automatically when we're approaching and getting ready to take off. Or after we've taken off, it'll automatically set that for you. So don't be surprised if you set it at a certain value and then suddenly it's changed to a different one. So I'll select, great move. Approach is for ILSs. Vertical speed, if you clicked on vertical speed, let's see if we can call that up now. Right down here, down, up, so we can dial up here just by clicking, or you can roll your mouse wheel for a faster change. Then you got back course, which rarely is needed, but sometimes I know in Alaska it is. Indicated airspeed, I don't think works. Climb and descend. The climb will have you climbing at a fixed rate of climb at 1500, and the descent will have you descend at a rate of 500. So if you want those two fixed numbers, you can just use that for those purposes. One final note, we'll just go through the shift features. If you get shift 1, there's your Avionics unit. If you go shift 2, there's your Garmin GNS 530. Shift 3 gives you your artificial horizon and compass. Shift 4 is the autopilot features and the ones we just covered. Shift 5 is where you get these options here. Shift 6 is a waste of time, or nearly a waste of time, and it gives you the misleading information that it stops at shift 6. It doesn't. It runs up to shift 7, which gives us our universal FMS, and shift 8, which then allows us to set it as a cold and dark state or ready to taxi, although be aware you're not ready for takeoff. There are things still to check. Or no action, which I can't fathom why a no action option is there, because you don't need it. And those are the shift pieces that go with this model. Now if you're curious as to what your rotation speeds might be, they vary a little bit, but really if you aim for about 115, you're right in the zone, and your V2 will be 5 knots faster than that. And then your best rated climb will be in the 135. And finally, the last thing I might mention is your rate of climb up to 10,000 is 160 knots. Between 10 and 15,000, it'll drop to 150. From 15,000 to 20,000, it's 140, and you can just see it just tapers as you go on up, and the ceiling is 25,000. Between 20 and 25,000, it's 130 knots. And your landing speeds, your crossing the threshold and landing is going to be around 110 to 105, depending upon your weight. 115 max, down to 97 at 11,000 pounds. So that should do it. I think that gives us all a great start. Hopefully it's been a fun reminder of how to operate this aircraft. And if you haven't purchased it, you're just curious about how it works, this is it. I find it's a little bit of a love-hate relationship. It's got one of the more detailed startup procedures compared to some other ones, and it porpoises a little bit at altitude as well. Bounces around 100 or 200 feet sometimes. It's just totally annoying, but that's the hate part. The rest of it is very likable, and especially if you love this aircraft itself, you'll find it's okay. So have a good time. Thanks for listening, and have fun flying. Take care.